civilian doctors need to know that if they have patients that have, been in the military, that they need to pay more attention. If a young woman comes in with a lump, like, she doesn't need to be sent away. She needs to be paid attention to, because there's a chance that that lump, despite her age, could actually be a sign of cancer.
Welcome to Veteran Cancer Talk by the Veteran Cancer Network. I'm your host, Ashton Kroner, and today I'm joined by Charise, the founder and executive director of the Grace Project, a fine art photography initiative honoring those impacted by cancer. Charise, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So for those that are just now meeting you for the first time, Charise, go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and the Grace Project.
Okay, so I am the founder and the photographer of a small nonprofit called the Grace Project. And basically what I do is I take photographs of people who are affected by breast cancer, who have had surgery and treatment for breast cancer. And I travel around the country photographing people with their scars and having them like really inhabit their body and basically share the story that's been written on their body. And I've been doing that since 2009, and I've probably photographed over 1,200 different portraits at this point. And which also includes a chapter of the project called the Athena Division, which is where I've been photographing veterans and active military personnel affected by breast cancer, because apparently the Department of Defense did a study in 2009 showing an increased chance of breast cancer for people who had served. And so I've been using my platform as a breast cancer photographer and activist to let people know that if they have served in the military, that they have an increased chance and that they need to be proactive about their health. And not just people who serve, but like civilian doctors need to know that if they have patients that have been in the military, that they need to pay more attention. If a young woman comes in with a lump, like, she doesn't need to be sent away. She needs to be paid attention to, because there's a chance that that lump, despite her age, could actually be a sign of cancer. So yeah, that's a really powerful chapter of the Grace Project that I've been working on.
That's wonderful. How did you even get involved in something like this? I mean, I know your background is photography, but they're very specific, dare I say, niche area to get into. What prompted that?
So I used to do boudoir photography, which, if people don't know what that is it's become quite popular now. Actually, women will go and have like sensual portraits taken, usually in lingerie or semi-nude, and it's an empowering experience for them, but they often do it as a gift for their partners. But actually, every woman I ever photographed said to me, I'm doing this for my partner for his birthday, but I really want this for myself, and it would be this. So I had been doing that for quite a while and getting quite a reputation for doing it. And back then, there really actually weren't even a lot of women doing that type of photography. And so this local paper did an article about my work, and ran the article, and they interviewed some of my clients. And a few weeks later, I got a call from a man, and he wanted to book a shoot for his wife, which I thought was kind of curious, because he hadn't told her he wanted to do this yet. But the day of the shoot, he booked it for her. And the day of the shoot, this lovely woman, she was 62 years old, short, cropped gray hair, and very kind of enthusiastic and beautiful. But she had all these hat boxes and hangers, but it was all clothing meant to cover her body. And I thought, how curious, because, she's doing this shoot for her husband. But it was her shoot, so she got to do what she wanted. So I'm photographing her, and she's feeling sexy and looking beautiful. And after about 45 minutes, she stops and she says, I have a confession to make. And I said, oh, sure. What's that? And she said, well, I'm a 12-year breast cancer survivor. I have had a mastectomy on one side. I feel mutilated on that side of my body. But my husband read the article about your work, and he wanted me to feel the way that the women that were interviewed in the article felt. And I was just like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So I continued photographing her, and now that she had confessed, she started uncovering her non-mastectomy breast, but leaving the mastectomy side covered, and she's laying on the couch in this beautiful odalisque position. I could just see there's this sort of rapport going between her and me, and I'm photographing her and she's feeling beautiful. And suddenly she just takes off her shirt and she goes, fuck it, I'm doing this for myself. And
True
I'm,
warrior.
yeah, and I'm like behind the camera going, oh my God, I just like witnessed somebody let go of 12 years of shame in one moment. Like she had never shown her scars to anyone other than her doctors and her husband. And, it was like a really incredibly cathartic experience for her, but it was very cathartic for me. And I kept like, it just kind of stuck in my heart. Like the experience with her. And then not long after that, I had another friend who called and said, I don't have any money to pay you for a shoot, but I'm really hoping that you'll say yes. I'm having my breast chopped off in 3 days. I need somebody to photograph my body because I want to remember what I looked like before. So I told her, I said, of course, come over. So I photographed her, and then I had her come back a few weeks later and re-photographed her with her new body because I didn't want her to feel like that before picture was like the beautiful picture, that she was still beautiful after with her scars. So between those two women, just kept thinking about this breast cancer thing. And so I went on the internet, and all I could find were these sort of medical pictures photographed in doctor's offices, like in fluorescent bad lighting, like with the head cropped out of the picture and just these fresh scars. And it was very brutal and scary to look at. And I thought to myself, if I was a woman newly diagnosed and this is all I could find when I Googled mastectomy, I'd be petrified to think that this is what I'm going to look like, because there was no humanity or beauty to it. So I decided that I was going to create a project that would put a face to breast cancer and put some beauty and some humanity behind it. And, little did I know that years and years later, I would still be working on this project and that it would become a massive international, project. But here I am, and I'm still going. So
How inspirational. So, how did you get involved in, breast cancer survivors within the veteran community? What was if you don't mind telling me about your first veteran or first couple of veterans?
I had a friend of mine, Donna. She called me. She was a veteran, and she was also a lobbyist for women's issues, and was really into empowering women within the government and stuff like that. And she called me and said, I don't know if you're aware. She said not many people are, but the Department of Defense had done a study in 2009 showing an increased level of breast cancer in the military. She said up to 40%, which is quite a high increase. She says, I have young friends who are dying out in the field because they're ignoring lumps because they think that they're too young, or their doctors tell them to go away. And I just really want to just put some, attention to this area. So we plan to do a photo shoot at the National Women's Memorial in Arlington, and we gathered 20 women from all over the country, like flew into DC. It was pretty amazing, actually, and photographed them in DC on like over a weekend. And it was pretty incredible because I have to say, like, people were really emotional, and even more so than the regular breast cancer survivors, because I think that women who serve often feel that they have to be like stronger than their male counterparts. And so things like dealing with cancer and stuff like that, they just kind of push through it and don't let them actually acknowledge the emotionality that needs to sort of rise up when you have a cancer diagnosis. So a lot of these women were just like, for the first time, cried about their cancer as I was photographing them. And over that weekend, I heard a lot of intense stories, like, one woman who had been sent to a surgeon who specialized in prostate cancer, and he'd only ever done one breast surgery, and he actually destroyed all of her stomach muscles trying to do the reconstruction. And she ended up having to pay, thousands of dollars of her own money to get his mess fixed. And yeah, I mean, it was really intense listening to all the different stories. I even had like one woman who told me she didn't participate in the project, but she wanted to talk to me about the project. And she was a colonel and serving in Afghanistan, and, in charge of all these men below her. She had quite a high, quite a substantial job in the military. And she didn't tell anyone while she was going through cancer because she didn't want to lose her position. And she said it was really intense. Like while she was out in the field, she had to wear Depends because you can't pull over to go to the bathroom, anything like that. And the chemo was like causing havoc on her stomach. And in the process of doing this project, I heard a lot of like really intense stories. And now I've continued to photograph veterans and active military throughout the country. I don't always do it. I mean, if I'm in DC and someone's there, I can always call the Women's Memorial. They're very helpful and they'll always let me shoot there. And it's much nicer to shoot on site. But I usually what I do is I'll just photograph them on a plain backdrop, and then just lift their photograph and put it on the same backdrop that all the other military portraits are on, so that there's some uniformity with the pictures. Yeah, unfortunately, the really sad part about that story is that my friend Donna, who told me about the increase of breast cancer in the military, ended up dying from metastatic breast cancer. She really didn't tell anyone that she was sick because she was very sort of active working in government, and kept working right through her illness, and kept it very quiet. So it was really quite a shock in 2020 when I suddenly heard that Donna had died from breast cancer. But she would be so proud of the directions that this project has taken, and I feel like she's like there cheering me on in the background.
I love that you're able to sit there and still give her a part of this, a part of this wonderful project. I mean, because of her, hundreds, if not thousands of other women veterans are being able to see their body in a new light, in a beautiful way, versus the scary way that a lot of us sit there and think of anytime that our body goes through changes. I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned something earlier about early cancer detection. And I know when we were talking last week about the Veteran Cancer Network, obviously that's something close to our mission, but in our hearts. But when you were talking with, these women, how hard was it? Did they tell you stories about what they had to go through in order to be able to get diagnosed? Because that's been a real struggle with the veterans, going through, healthcare, the healthcare systems, not just the VA, but just in general because of their ages.
Yeah, one of the women actually that I photographed, her name is Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas, and she actually died 6 months after I photographed her, but she was really quite a powerhouse, and she advocated for veterans with breast cancer right up till the moment that she died. And shortly before she died, she brought an act called the Kate Thomas Hendricks Service Act, which actually coincided with the PACT Act. And she made it so that, like, if women have served in, places where they've been exposed to toxins, they can have access to mammograms regardless of their age now. So hopefully that's all in place throughout the country, because I know different different VAs are have different, some of them are better than others, but hopefully, women do have access to that. And hopefully somebody who finds a lump, despite their age, and even if they have no family history, if they've served in the military, it's important for them to push. If they go to a doctor and the doctor says, no, you're fine. I had one young woman who was really into fitness, really into health, ate super healthy, worked out, was proud of her muscles, found a lump in her breast, and was feeling tired, like tired all the time. And she was just like, I know there's something wrong with my body. Went to the doctor. Her doctor said to her, oh, no, you're fine. You don't have a family history of breast cancer. You're too young to have it. Just, go away, come back in a year, and we'll just revisit it. And she said, no, I know my body. I'm tired all the time. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I work out all the time. I eat healthy, and I don't feel like myself. And if you don't take a biopsy of this lump, I'm going to go to somebody else. And the doctor actually said to her, well, I'm going to biopsy your lump just to prove you wrong. And so they did a biopsy, and it turned out that she actually did have breast cancer. And between the time that she was initially diagnosed and by the time she had her surgery, she had progressed from like an early stage up to like a stage 2B, which is she had advanced quite quickly within a few weeks. So if she would have waited that entire year, chances are she could have metastatic breast cancer now, and that is at this point incurable. It really is important for people who kind of sense that there's something wrong with their bodies to just like trust their instincts and advocate for themselves, because you know your body better than anybody else does. So
I think that's important. Advocating for yourself is it can be really hard for for veterans or really just anybody, because doctors and healthcare professionals, they have that sense of authority, and anybody in the military, they're used to the chain of command. And so if somebody says it's you're fine, I'm not seeing anything, it's very easy to dismiss. So I love your message of advocating for yourself, because you're right. You only know your body is it's your body.
yeah,
Oh my
and
goodness.
even within the process of cancer, like once you start on that cancer journey, you have to continue advocating for yourself as well. Like for instance, my one friend was sent to this doctor who'd only ever done one surgery, whereas another friend of mine was sent to a surgeon who in a similar situation. And she said, "Well, I'm sorry, if you've only done like this many breast surgeries, I'm not interested in being your patient." And he said to her, "Well, surgery is surgery." And she said, "Well, would you like to have a breast surgeon work on your prostate if it was reversed?" And he actually said to her, "Touche," and he let her go on her way. But like, like the advocacy has to be like all the way through, because doctors they're great and they have all good intentions, but you have it's your body, and whatever happens, it's like at the end of the day, it all falls on you.
Absolutely. Now, your work that you do these beautiful exhibits. Where I guess where are some of your more memorable places that you've gone and been able to interact with the public that just was just mesmerized by your work, like I am?
Well, right now I have actually a show in Boston near the airport, and it's in a little gallery. They have limited hours. They're only open on Wednesday and Saturday afternoons, but I've split that exhibit into the gallery has 3 rooms, so I've split that gallery into. I have the flatties in the front, which are women who choose no reconstruction after breast cancer. Like there's a whole dynamic movement right now of people who are trying to let other people know that it's okay to not reconstruct, and that it's a healthy and valid option, and that it should be put on the table right with your surgery. You shouldn't be like necessarily pushed into reconstruction. So I have the flatties in one room, and I have the Athena division in another room, and I have metastatic patients in another room, because those are 3 areas that I think, we're all aware of breast cancer. You can't walk into a supermarket in October without seeing pink ribbons all over everything. But, I try to use my platform to kind of raise some awareness about breast cancer that people aren't aware of, like the increased cancer in the military, or the fact that metastatic breast cancer gets very little funding, despite the fact that it's the one that you die of.
Now, if somebody wants to book a show with you, what is that process like? Let's just say somebody out, in the West Coast, out in California, is interested in bringing your show out to them. What do they need to do?
If someone wants to bring a show out, like I've had it, sometimes a gallery or a museum will just reach out to me and say, we have the spot. Would you like to have an exhibit? And other times, like the show in Boston, actually, is a woman that really wanted to bring the exhibit to her town, and talk to the gallery about it, and they were interested, and so we made it happen like that. Yeah, if someone wants to be active and bringing a show out, I can even give them proposal materials and stuff like that if they have, a gallery or a place that they think would be suitable for exhibiting the work.
And for those that are interested in being photographed by you, do they travel to you? Do you travel to them? How does that work?
So I'm located in Kingston, New York. And so if anyone's in the tri-state area and they want to drive to me, I can make an arrangement at any time to photograph here. But I do travel a lot. And so I do have a place on my website under the tab that says Model for the Grace Project. And it has a whole series of, frequently asked questions. And then at the bottom, there's a application form that they can fill out so that if I'm in the region, I can reach out and say, hey, I'm in California this week. Would you like to be photographed? So I have had like some pretty serious exhibitions with this work. Like I had a show in 2022, I believe, at the National Women's Memorial in Arlington, which was such an incredible place to have the work because we shot it there, but it was really special for the women that are like in the project see their pictures hanging in that location just because it's such an incredible museum that honors their service. So it was an incredible exhibit because they were being honored for their breast cancer journey, but also for their service as well. It was like this really powerful experience for them. And then last year, I had an exhibit at the American Legion War Memorial Museum in San Francisco, which is a really incredible space and such an honor to, it's like one of those big, grand old marble museums. And it's just so amazing to see your work hanging in one of those amazing spaces.
Now, do you do any work with the VA? Obviously, a lot of our veterans, go to the VA for care. Especially those female veterans. Are you able to engage with the VA to offer this to them?
Yeah, I have actually worked with, I've worked with a couple of VAs, and in fact, I even had an exhibit in 23, I believe, 2 years ago in October at the women's clinic in Houston at the Houston VA, which was pretty great. Yeah, so that was and the show got a really great response. And I also photographed patients that wanted, while I was there for the exhibit, photographed patients that wanted to participate. So I'll usually, like, if I have an exhibit, I'll also piggyback with a series of photo shoots. Like when I was in Boston recently for the opening, I set a day aside to photograph people after the exhibit.
I love that. I love that you're able to find beauty in something so, you know, devastating what a lot of people think of, and you're able to find, and help others be able to find their beauty again. I love that.
It's interesting. While I'm photographing, I have people meditate before I photograph them, which sounds odd, but it actually really helps take people out of the whole like, oh my God, I'm doing a photo shoot. It grounds them in their body. And then I'll have them think about certain things, like the military women. I'll have them just suddenly think about a moment when they felt so proud of being a woman who serves in the military, and I'll just be like, now just feel that in your heart, and now like express that in your body and in your posture, and show me what that looks like. And then I'll have them do things like I'll be like, think about your deepest loves, like the people you love more than anything in the world, that have been there for you, that have your back. And then I just say, and now imagine that the air that you're breathing represents their love and spirit, and you can just breathe them into your heart. And when have them closing their eyes while I'm telling them this, and then I'll say, now open your eyes and show me what that love looks like. And all of a sudden, like, that person just transforms into ultimate beauty, because, in truth, what beauty is not what's all external here. It's not our hair or it's our love and what's in our heart and what we're able to express. And so I think that's why I'm able to kind of really take this difficult subject and turn it in, and show the beauty of it, because the beauty really is coming from the person.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, obviously, through the years, you've been able to, hear a lot of stories, and I'm sure been given advice. So for those individuals that are currently going through cancer, or, finishing up or just starting in their journey, what advice would you give them?
I would say advocate for yourself. Ask questions, take a notebook, or I mean, it's a scary thing if you feel like you can bring someone with you to write down notes so that they can be your memory for you, because you're going through so much at one time. And then the other thing I would say is find your peers. Like, the most healing thing that I see happening are these meetup groups that happen. Oftentimes they're sort of very focused meetup groups. Like, I travel with some other nonprofits that do meetups. Like, I travel with one nonprofit called Flat Out Love, and they are the Flatty group that they all get together and they have dance parties and they go swimming topless and and they just have a blast. And I do photo shoots for them, and, they eat dinner, and and the level of friendships that are formed in these groups is just phenomenal. Like being able to find somebody that you can relate to on a real heart level. And also because everything that you go through when you go through cancer is so hard, and a lot of non-cancer people don't want to hear it or don't know how to talk about it, or so being able to find peers where you can express your heart and they understand what you're going through is like seriously the most healing thing ever. I mean, I travel with another nonprofit group called MBC Travelers, and they do bucket lists. They're all metastatic, so they don't know how much time they have, and they do these kind of crazy trips. This year they're doing a trip to Africa, so that's going to be pretty
Wonderful.
exceptional. But
Are you joining on that trip?
I am. I'm so excited.
Can't wait to see the photos.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can actually get connected with a clinic in Africa, to maybe try and photograph some people there, which I think would be quite incredible.
Oh my goodness, that sounds wonderful.
Men get breast cancer, including military men, and I actually do have in the project a young man named Brett, who I photographed. And, men have a much higher mortality rate because a lot of times they don't realize that a lump could be a sign of a lump in their chest could be a sign of cancer. Doctors sometimes don't even realize. And in fact, this young man that I photographed, he was only 32 years old, a single father of four, had served in the Navy. And he was like, physically fit. He worked out like a really cut guy. And when he went to his doctor and told, he said, I've got this weird lump on my chest. And the doctor was like, you work out, that's scar tissue. Like that happens sometimes when you work out really hard. So they sent him away. And thankfully, um, he got a new girl, he got a girlfriend that would like notice the lump, and she was like, what is this lump here? And he was like, I went to the doctor, and they said it was scar tissue from. And she was like, I think you need to get a second opinion about this. And she pushed him to get a second opinion, and turned out that he had stage 3B breast cancer. And so, thank goodness he had this proactive girlfriend that pushed him to go. And, because stage 3B, that's like one step below metastatic, and there is no cure for that. So, but he, went through the treatment, and I know it was hard. My heart went out to him actually, because he was telling me, he's like, it's so hard. He goes, I really haven't, he goes, this is really, being photographed is so out of my comfort zone. He goes, I don't tell people about my cancer. He goes, I keep it like really quiet. And he goes, I'm on this intense chemo. And he goes, some days, it's all I can do to go home and make dinner for the kids. I'm so like tired and sick. And, so, I mean, it was interesting to me that, sometimes people don't, I kind of told him, I'm like, you have to reach out to your community and your people and ask for help. But again, I think that's a military thing. It's like, you just go out and you get it done, and you don't, like you don't try and reach out for help because you're just taught to push through stuff. And yeah, so anyway, men have to be aware that if they find a lump on their chests, that they need to go and get that tested too.
Oh my gosh, so much to unpack there too. So, you brought up some good points, especially whenever it comes to men, they tend to have that stoic, but getting diagnosed with something that most of the population, considers a woman's cancer. So there's that stigma, whenever it comes to, being able to even talk about that. And then, how is the person you're talking to going to receive that information? So that's, that is something that I think as a society, we need to understand that, both both sides of the house can get breast cancer, but like you had mentioned, that community and the community aspect is interesting that you bring that up, and I want to talk a little bit further on that one. So I know when my husband was going through cancer, we had it on both sides. So many people were reaching out saying, how can I help? But from the caregiver and from the veteran, we didn't know what to say. We didn't know how to reach out for help because we were so used to being able to kind of just take on everything ourselves. So How would you sit there and tell somebody that, to be able to really reach out for help and one, accept that help and be okay with that?
Well, I mean, I think that, just even within your own general community, people do want to support it. Ask your neighbors, like just ask your neighbors, say, I'm going through cancer. Is there anybody who can make me a lasagna or drop off a pizza or come and wash my dishes? I mean, just reaching out like locally and immediately. And then beyond that, there are organizations that that are out there that and different regions have different ones, but like, what is it, like little pink ribbons of hope, I think, in Ohio, they will help people with house cleaning and stuff like that. There are nonprofits that are set up in some regions where they will send people out to help you clean your house, or there are organizations that will send you on vacation. If you go out there on the internet and do your research, I mean, you can have a great vacation with your family if you're going through breast cancer. So there's a lot of resources out there for people. And then just even within the different cancer groups themselves, I would say, like, join, go online and find, like, even if it's just on Facebook, like the different cancer groups, because if you have a question, and I see it happen a lot, like especially with the metastatic community, because they're dealing with some like really intense like medical stuff all the time. And for instance, like at one point there was there was a cancer group that were getting together, and like all these, from this one medication, all these women were getting like bone pain. And the ones there were a few that weren't getting any bone pain at all. And they were the ones that were taking like Claritin for their allergies.
Interesting.
And then they ended up finding out through these women sharing that, like, taking Claritin. Now apparently the doctors will give you Claritin before your infusions because it was discovered that way. But yeah, just kind of getting online. And if you have like, this is bothering me, or I have these sores, or I have this pain, and people will come up with solutions. So like you'll get support emotionally by joining these groups. You can get support physically by your immediate neighbors, and you can also reach out to these other organizations that are set up to try and help people. There are organizations that will give people rides to their to their rides to the hospital when they have to have their infusions. And I mean, it is different in different places, and there are some places where there's a lot more support. But I think it's definitely important to just ask and reach out and not be afraid to do that.
Where can people find you?
Okay, so my website is the-grace-project.org. Um, I'm on very active on Facebook, which is Facebook/Grace Project, and on Instagram it's at 800, the number 800 and goddesses, the words. Yeah, those are my main platforms.
All right, you heard it. Go find Charise. Go follow her work. It's so inspirational. For those that are interested in getting photographed, make sure that you check out their website. And if you want to bring an exhibit near you, make sure that you reach out to Charise. Charise, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to talk.